I have to say, I love Zoom. I'm recording this on Zoom. It's so easy. And then I upload what is it, the MP4, the file to YouTube. But gosh, it's just incredibly easy. I love it. And you should know by now that the screen share that I'm giving is the written version of this discussion of Torget. Okay, so the next section of Torget that I want to talk about is a section called Indian Country. And as you know, I drummed it into your heads, the Comanches were more powerful in Texas than the Spanish, but there were other Indian groups too. And it's funny we call it Spanish Texas, but we should probably call it Comanche Texas. But here's the paradox. Although the Spanish were weaker than the Comanche in Texas, the Comanche had no system of writing. They had no system of laws. They had no system of government. So although the Comanche were much more powerful than the Spanish in Texas, they have left no legacy in the sense of cities and the names of rivers and the Roman Catholic Church and the Spanish language and on and on and on. So it just kind of shows the power of a society that has a written language, an established judicial system, an established political system. So long story short, the Spanish have left a much stronger legacy than the Comanche, although at the time the Comanche were stronger. Okay. I want to point out 1785 that the Spanish make a truce with the Comanche based on the Spanish basically trading goods with the Comanche and actually giving gifts to the Comanche. They start buying off the Comanche not to raid Spanish settlements. But the problem is that the supply line from the interior of Mexico into Texas is pretty weak. And so the Spanish, for the most part, they keep their promise to give the Indians goods, but it's a little bit unreliable. And so after 1785, you don't have the constant war between the Spanish and the Comanche. But at the same time, the Comanches get a little frustrated with the Spanish. And once that happens at the same time that the Comanche sense another opportunity. And what's that other opportunity? The slave-holding areas of the United States, which after 1803 neighbor Texas. Okay, so the Comanches start looking eastward into Louisiana, into Mississippi and Alabama, and they're not going to raid these areas. It's way out of the Comancheria, but they're willing to trade. They're not willing; they're happy to trade with American slaveholders. Now, here's a key point that I'm going to develop quite thoroughly over the next couple of weeks. What are slaveholders growing? They're growing cotton. Why are they growing cotton? Because it's the most valuable commodity on earth. Think about cotton as kind of the oil or the petroleum of the 19th century. It was the commodity that the industrializing world wanted. You wanted cotton. There was growing population on the globe, so you wanted cotton for clothing, for textiles, for all kinds of aspects of life. So cotton becomes super valuable, and the U.S. South becomes the dominant cotton growing area in the globe, especially the Gulf South, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. Beginning in the early 1800s, the population of these areas explodes. The population of African captives, i.e. slaves, explode, and the production of cotton explodes. So I've got some figures that I took from the Torget book to give you a sense of that. But that's Torget's big story. The Texas becomes enmeshed into this cotton economy. And I'll develop this idea in the lectures that I give next week. But that's the big picture. Beginning after 1803, Texas becomes, and even Spanish Texas becomes enmeshed in the U.S. cotton economy, which is producing, I think, over half of the world's cotton by 1820. Okay, so what does this mean for for the Texas Indians? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to let you kind of figure out what the answer is. What did slaveholding cotton farmers want from Texas Indians? And because of this, what did this mean for the relation between the Spanish and its Texas Indians? Does the desire of Texas Indians to supply the needs of U.S. cotton farmers, does that help relations between the Spanish and Indians, or does that hurt relations between the Spanish and Indians? And how does that work? If it helps, how does it help? If it hurts, how does it hurt? And you don't have to read the book in detail to know the answer. Uh, Torget makes it very, very clear the dynamics of what's going on once the Comanche start trading with U.S. cotton farmers, which are suddenly, after 1803, next door to Texas. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is smuggling. Texas becomes a conduit for smuggling. And again, I'm not going to give you the answer here. I'm going to let you figure it out for yourself. But you don't have to read the Torget book in detail. Don't memorize every detail. I think hopefully by now, you know, I'm more of a big picture professor than a super detailed, drive you crazy kind of professor. But here's the question: what was the most important, and I hate to use this word, but I'm going to go ahead and use this word, commodity that was being smuggled via Texas, especially by the Lafitte brothers? And I'll give you a hint. This begins the process of introducing a new ethnic group into Texas that had never really been in Texas in large numbers before. So um, that kind of covers the waterfront of what I'm looking for in Torget this week. Let me remind you again that there's two sections that you're not reading: the rebellion section and the last section, A Vast and Noiseless Desert.